All right, so let's look at how the web works. Okay, this is just an overview, which means, we're not going to go into too many details about this, but I just want to give you an overview of how the web works because that is important to understand, especially as we continue learning about Django, right? So let's go through this. So the way I like to look at the web is just about request and response. What does that really mean? The idea of the web is that we have servers and clients. What does that mean, really? So a server, essentially, is a computer that is pretty powerful, which provides a few things. Provide resources, provide services, as well data to other computers or devices. So that's essentially what a server is. At its core, it's just a computer that has a little bit more power than a normal computer usually. Although any computer, as long as it has good RAM, it can serve as a server as well. Okay? But that is essentially what happens. Now, the server sits somewhere, and then we have what we call clients. So these are clients. So we have the server and we have what we call clients. So essentially have this connection between servers and clients. So servers serve clients. So what are clients? So clients could be anything, devices, could be computers, other computers. So anything that can request resources or data from the server is indeed a client. So essentially what we have at the bottom here, these in this case are just computers, but could be any devices, right? These are what we call the clients. Now, the client-server communication is a very important concept in computing and networking in general. So essentially we have a client. So again, remember, a client is any device that receives information, can receive information from somewhere, in this case server. And then on the other hand, we have the server. So the server, really what happens here is that the client, I should say, sends a request to the server. And if all goes well, the server will return a response. That's all that's happening. The great thing here is that the server listens for incoming requests. So the moment it knows that receives some request from the client, it look at that request, make sure that the request is valid, and it then sends a response. The response could be positive, the response could be a failure, or and so forth, right? So that is the symbiotic relationship between the client and the server. This is the client-server communication. Now, when we look at this communication here, this client-server communication, there has to be some sort of protocol. A protocol essentially are rules and standards that were agreed upon and that are used to facilitate the communication between machines, right? In this case, client and servers. Now, these protocols, what they do is they define the format, the sequence, and error handling of the messages exchanged. Now, just think about, for instance, how we communicate with other people, right? So we need to have first a language that both parties understand. In this case, I'm communicating to you, with you, through the language of English. When it comes to client-server communication, the same thing has to happen. So the protocol, again, those rules and standards that have been agreed upon are used for this communication. So you can see here now when a client sends a request, it sends it as an HTTP request. So an HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So essentially is a way for the web server and clients to exchange, transfer text, images, audio, and other multimedia. Okay, there's different kind of protocols. There's FTP, File Transfer Protocol, and many others. So that is not the point here. Just to understand that there is a protocol, that there is a rule or rules, I should say, and standards that have been agreed upon that facilitates this communication, right? Request and response. That was an overview on how this client-server communication work, how the web in general works. Now, how does that pertain to what we're going to be looking into in this course, which is the Django framework? The reason why we went through all of this is because Django, the Django framework, has what we call the back end and also the front end side of things. Okay, so essentially the Django backend, right, it deals with the server-side development. So Django essentially is a server-side framework, but can also be used in this case as a front end because you can attach a front end so that users on the left hand side here are able to interact with the website. And this is very important because, as we'll see, that the communication between the back end and front end is made simple with Django. So Django as a framework is a server-side framework, which means it deals with server databases, all of the back-end infrastructure. But also it has the front end, which then we can attach different kinds of front-end frameworks, such as templates we're going to talk about here. This is specific to Django, essentially. We have React, that's a different framework. We have Vue and many, many other frameworks that we can attach to the Django backend so that users can actually see a website. Now, in this course here, we're not going to go overboard with front end because that is not the purpose. The big purpose for us to understand Django in general, but also we're going to look into the front end because we will be able to create a web application which allows users to do things in the front end.